So I want to welcome everybody to Hawaiian IANDS. And we're so grateful that you've all chosen to join us today. And I want to introduce a really great friend and just an amazing woman, Rebecca Austill-Clausen. I'm so excited for her to speak with us today. And I'll share a little bit with you about her and introduce her and then turn it over to her. So Becky had no psychic or spiritual experience when she discovered her ability to communicate with her deceased brother. Doubting her sanity and fearing she would lose the respect and support of her colleagues and her family, she struggled to mesh her spiritual awakening with the practical, everyday world. But she knew she had to find a way. Rebecca, an occupational therapist, Reiki master, and international speaker, finally found the courage to share these experiences in her award-winning book, Changemaker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. Tonight, she's going to share with us her experiences of how, when her brother had his diagnosis of AIDS, how it started to transform her life, and how, upon his passing, which she'll share later, he came to her and helped her have an amazing awakening and really changed her life. She's now runs this amazing business in helping others with Reiki healing, which is so good for us NDEers and pretty much everybody. And she's just an amazing person. And what I think so amazing is she's had just such an awful tragedy, and all of us, we've lost loved ones before, but to turn it around in such an amazing way, I'm just really honored to have her speak with us. So Becky, I will turn it over to you.
Oh, Shaun, you are so lovely. Thank you very, very much. That was beautiful. I am so thrilled to be here with everybody tonight. Thank you very, very much. I see some familiar faces, which is great fun, and some new friends. And so thank you all very much. I'm going to talk for about an hour and then we'll do some questions and I can stay later. And I'm very, very honored to be here. So let me get rolling. It's really wonderful to have this supportive group. And Susan, thank you for being here, also assisting Shaun. So what happened with me is really quite the journey. It was in the early 1990s, and my brother's gay. He did pass of AIDS, but I knew that he was gay. He came out when he was in his 20s. And this was about 1992. And my brother David was about 32 years old. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people were dying of AIDS. And it was really, really tough. I was walking, you'll hear a Boston accent for tonight, and I was walking at Cape Cod, Coast Guard National Seashore with my brother. And every summer, our family goes camping. And so we're on our traditional family vacation, having a wonderful time. David's 4 years younger than I am. And I just casually said to him, "Hey, Dave, you've been tested for AIDS." He turned away. The sun went behind the clouds. It got cold. I thought, oh my gosh, what is he going to say? And after about 10 seconds, he turned back, and it was the longest 10 seconds of my life. And he said, "I'm HIV positive." And I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know what that was. And I said, "David, what is that?" And he said, "It turns into AIDS." And at that point, it was the 1990s. Everybody that was HIV positive or got AIDS died, everybody. And I thought, holy mackerel, David, are you getting good medical care? That was my first question. And he said, yes. And he lived right outside of Boston in Rockport. He said, "I'm getting the best I can possibly receive." And he was from Harvard. So yes, it was very good. And then I said, "What can I do?" It was a horrible moment. And he said, "Becky, I'm doing all the precautions. Please don't tell anybody. I don't want to be treated any differently." And I said, "Okay." And I had been fairly recently married, and he said, "Please don't even tell your husband." And I said, "Fine." So what happened is that I had no support system. And of course, I was willing to do whatever I could to help my brother. And I found myself in a bookstore. Now, I read a lot, and I had no idea why I was in the New Age section. I didn't even know what New Age was. I'm a science-based occupational therapist, had no idea about anything except for science. And I thought, my gosh, and the reason I'm saying this is because if you find yourself someplace unusual, trust your instincts and trust your guts to know you are being guided there for some reason. And I started to look at books on the afterlife. I didn't even know there was an afterlife. And I was very careful to read the back of the book. And I wanted the person to sound normal, to sound logical, to sound professional. And so I started reading. And some of the books that I read resonated really well. And they described the fact that maybe, yes, we might live when we pass on. And so I sent them to David, and gosh, he was aware that there was a slight possibility that he might be able to continue to live after he passed. Well, the last week that he was on Earth, I got a call, and I live in Pennsylvania, and David had gone to the hospital in an ambulance. And he had always said to us, to our family, if I ever have to go to the hospital in an ambulance, I'm not coming back. And my parents had called me that morning and said, Becky, David went to the hospital in an ambulance. So I immediately flew out there. It was really disappointing when I saw David, because the first thing he said to me is, I'm so sorry to take you away from work. And I work all the time. And I thought, oh my gosh, my brother is potentially dying. And here he is apologizing to take me away from work. And it caused me to question my values. He really was dying, and it was quite sad. And all his friends came in and visited him, and we were there, and I couldn't believe it. And the night that I thought he was going to pass, I asked to stay in his room, in the hospital room. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was on a ventilator. And, when you're on a ventilator, it doesn't sound very good. And so I would hear these sounds. Oh, and he was breathing, the ventilator was breathing for him. He was pretty much in a coma at this point. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm pretty interested in numbers, and 3 oftentimes mind, body, soul. I didn't know any of that at that point, but I looked over at him and I felt nothing. I didn't know about energy. I didn't know about souls, but it just felt like he wasn't there. And I thought I ought to go back to my parents' house. They lived 20 minutes away, but what was I going to say? Well, David's body's still there, but it didn't feel like he was there. I mean, that didn't make sense at all to me. So I looked around the room, and there was some crystals there. David was into quartz crystals, and a friend of his, Edward, had recently passed from AIDS. And so Edward's crystal was there. And I had picked up earlier in the day, I had picked up Edward's crystal, and I got a little tingling, and I thought, oh my gosh, because I had called to Edward and said, Edward, could you please take care of David? And to me, that was a sign that he was there. And so I expressed my love, took David's crystal, took Edward's crystal and my crystal, and Edward's crystal and David's crystal, put him in my hands, put my hands around David, because he was lying flat on his back. One of his hands was, off to the side. And I closed my eyes. I saw a picture of the ocean, a vision. I saw a vision of the ocean. And in the ocean was this humongous fat porpoise. It wasn't really a porpoise though, but it looked like a porpoise. It looked like a dolphin, had a pug nose, really fat, didn't have the crest on the back. And I didn't know what it was, but it was pleasant. And I looked at it, and it had my brother's eyes. David had big brown eyes, and it had his eyes. And so here I am, my eyes are closed, looking at this animal that slowly started to come towards me. And I believed at that point that this was my brother. Somehow he had transformed into this animal. Now, I'm a Pisces, David's a Pisces, my dad's a Pisces, we're all Pisces. And so David was unable to swim in the ocean for 2 years. He ended up having AIDS for 7 years, or actually the HIV and then AIDS for 7 years. And so he was at that time considered a long-term survivor. And It felt so good to feel that he was back in his beloved ocean swimming, because he hadn't been able to go swimming for a couple of years. So this animal, with my brother's eyes, slowly, slowly, slowly was swimming towards me and then came inside me. And I felt the most incredible love and joy and happiness and belief that my brother David was alive. Somehow he had transformed into this animal, which I later found was a manatee. That's a whole nother story, which I'd never seen before, ever. But anyway, David as this animal seemed to stay in me for, gosh, probably 20 or 30 minutes. And then I'm filled with joy, filled with gratitude, filled with love. It slowly left. And there was a smaller animal right there beside it, same thing. And to me, that was his friend Edward. And I remember watching this animal leave, and he turns around and looks at me and flips his tail and leaves. And that is what was called a sheer death experience. I believe that at that point, David's soul had passed. Now his body still was moving on this ventilator for a couple of days, but it was about 4:30 in the morning, and I am filled with joy. And I went outside the hospital and I gave thanks, and I couldn't wait for my parents to come. And at 7:30 in the morning, they arrived, and I said, guess what happened to me? Well, thank goodness my parents didn't tell me that I'd lost my mind. My dad's a minister. I don't remember ever talking about the afterlife with him. And he said, Becky, people deal with death all sorts of ways. And it was very nice. So I'm like, okay, great. And I'm filled with joy. I go to the funeral. Well, David ended up passing a couple of days ago. And I go to the funeral, and of course, it was very, 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 very sad. And I was so proud of my parents, because they were well-respected members of the community, and they were able to say, our son passed of AIDS. And at that point, people were not saying that. And I would remember being so proud of my parents for explaining what happened to my brother. We were at the funeral home, and I remember seeing my brother's face, but I disregarded it because I thought that must be my imagination. And I encourage you, if you ever see your loved one's face or a sign, to believe it. And that is a huge concept about being able to communicate with our loved ones, is to believe that what we see is real. A couple of days later, my aunt calls me up, and she was quite spiritual. And she said, Becky, I just want to tell you, I had this vision of David rising with two angels on each side. And I thought, oh, thanks, Aunt Joan. That's lovely. It was about 4 or 5 days later, after David passed, and he had been living with a girl, which was interesting. But anyway, he was living with a girl named Lorene, and they had been roommates for 5 years. And so they knew each other's schedule extremely well. And Lorene called me up, and she said, hey, Beck, I have a story to tell you. Do you have a few minutes? And I'm like, of course. And she said, I want to tell you what happened to me. Every day I go into my bathroom at 7 o'clock in the morning. I always have the same schedule. And I heard this sound. Hopefully you can hear that. She said, I'm hearing a knocking, and I looked under the bathtub and thought maybe something was the matter. And I opened up the closet, and I thought something was the matter. I couldn't figure out what this sound was. And she had a dog named Bubbles. It was a Bichon, and it was going nuts, running and running and running around. And she thought, where is this sound coming from? And she looks up to the ceiling, and she sees a big, huge black bird. She said it was a raven. Never seen it before, ever. Go away, she said. The next day, she goes into the bathroom at 7 o'clock in the morning, just like she always does. She hears it, guess what? Same sound. She had taken a broom and had left it in the closet and looked up, and there's this same raven. And she says, shushes with the broom, go away, go away. Dog's going nuts, running around, barking. Third day, goes into the bathroom, and you can imagine what she hears. She looks up and she says, "David, I know it's you. I'm okay. I love you. I miss you, but you're scaring the dog. Can you please not come back?" And she never saw that bird again. And that was the first time that I really started to believe, my gosh, there is something happening with my brother. He is definitely communicating with us. But it still didn't relieve the grief. I couldn't understand it. Made no sense to me at all. I couldn't understand why my 37-year-old brother passed. It was about 6 weeks after he had passed. My heart is closed. I'm filled with grief. And you know, when your heart's closed, you can't feel anything. You just feel the grief. And so I was riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm. And that day, I got the best present of my life. It was a beautiful day. David passed on 10/1, October 1st. It was middle of November. We had just had our first frost, Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. Icicles were shining, rainbows were sparkling, and I opened up my heart just a little bit and said, "Thank you. Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day." I closed my eyes, and there was my brother in human form, wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. I had never, ever, ever done anything, seen anything, experienced anything, read anything like this. It was so real and so beautiful, and it felt right. And I started to talk with David. Now my eyes are closed. I started to talk with David, and I said, "David, how are you doing?" And he was about 7 years younger. He looked wonderful and healthy. He says, "I'm great. How are you doing?" After a couple of seconds, I realized I could share thought. And within a split second, I understood what he was doing, how he was doing. We shared everything. I looked to the right, and there were my grandparents, Abe and Bessie Dole from Wellesley, Massachusetts. They had both passed about 10 years before, holding hands like they always did. There was Edward standing beside them. He's a very tall fellow, 6'7". He had passed about 6 months ago. And beside him was my friend Holly. And Holly had passed when she was about 20. So this was like 20 years ago. And I always felt badly. I was in this charitable organization called the Rainbow Girls. It's a Masonic Eastern Star type of group. And I had gone to college, and Holly had wanted me to install her. And I'm at college, first semester, having quite a good time. And I didn't want to memorize 15 pages of installation ritual. And I said, "Holly, I'm so sorry. I can't do that." And I always felt badly. And so I said to Holly, "I'm so sorry I couldn't be your installing officer." And she said, "Becky, it's totally fine." And 20 years of guilt was erased in a split second. And so I look back at my brother. Story goes on, but it was the first time that I believed, that I truly believed life was eternal. So I went back to work. I'm like, okay, enough of this. But that night I went to the library because we didn't really have the internet. This is 1995. We didn't really have the internet. I go to the library, and I thought I would find a book that would explain what was going on. And I was walking up and down the corridor, and I think I expected a book to fall out and be the book. Well, that did not happen. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. Now what do I do? And so I went to a health food store, and I looked at the bulletin board and expected to have something resonate with me. Well, nothing did. And I'm the type of person that sort of makes things happen. But at that point, I asked, and I encourage you, if you want something, if you want to communicate with your loved ones that have passed on, ask. And you say, "Who do I ask?" I had no idea who to ask, but I asked. I said, "Could you please send me a teacher?" And then you let it go. Just let it go. If you ask with a pure heart, most likely your answer will be received. A couple of weeks later, I'm at work. I didn't tell anybody any of this stuff that had happened except for my husband. And my parents knew a little bit, but I kept it very quiet. I I did start to question whether I was losing my mind, but it felt good, felt right. A friend of mine came in, Dr. Amy Carroll. She's an occupational therapist, and she was on my staff at the time. And she said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, it's rough, Amy. It's real rough." And she said, "I met somebody." And I'm like, "Really?" "I met somebody that I think you'd like. She's a shaman." Now, I had by that point read a couple of hundred books about the afterlife, but I still wasn't sure what a shaman was. And I said, "What's a shaman?" And she said, "Well, I'm not really sure, but I believe a shaman believes that everything natural in life has energy." I'm like, "Oh." And she talks to people that have passed on. And I'm like, "No kidding." And her name's Nancy Ariel. And Nancy has unfortunately passed. But I apprenticed with Nancy for, gosh, 3 to 6 hours a week for a year. And I learned to communicate with my brother. And at that point, I also learned how to do Reiki. And Reiki enhances our ability to communicate. Well, I started to have all these incredible experiences. I'm talking to my brother. I'm talking to all these spirit guides. I'm talking to all sorts of nature entities and spirits. And I go to the Professional American Occupational Therapy Association annual conference. Now, I'm very active within our national association. And people would say, "Hey, Beck, I just read your chapter, or I just read whatever you did. How are you doing?" And I started to share what had happened to me. And they looked at me and thought I was nuts. Well, I lost probably about 10 years of respect by that point, but I didn't care because I was on cloud 9. I'm communicating with my brother. I'm having a glorious time. I'm learning the afterlife is real. The last day of the conference, I ended up going to some event and I saw a nun. And I thought, "Oh, this is going to be interesting. Let me sit beside a nun and find out what she believes." Within 5 minutes, she's telling me about automatic writing, which I had no idea what automatic writing was. And I said, What are you talking about?" And she said, "Last week I went to New York and I was trained by a psychologist in automatic writing." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "It's when you finish a meditation or you're in meditation and your hand starts to move across the page under its own volition." I'm like, "You're kidding." So went home, and by that point, my husband and I had a couple of little kids. They were about 5 and 7. And I went the next day to go ride my horse. And I was by that point meditating about 4 times on the horse. And so I would come back. Nancy, my shaman, had said, "If you meditate, write it down, start keeping a journal." So I was sitting in my car, had a lovely ride, and writing in my journal about my meditations. And all of a sudden, my hand starts to move across the page. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can either freak out or go with the flow. Because if I freak out, it's probably going to stop." So I wrote, so it wrote a poem. It said, I wish I remembered it, but it says something like, "The heavens above and the earth below." Now, I don't talk like that, or at least I didn't at that point. And I'm like, "Who are you?" So that's what I write. "Who are you?" "I am love." Now, at that point, I didn't know about love except the type of love that we have with our partners. That's the only type of love I knew about, or with our family. And so I'm like, "Love." And I wrote "love?" question mark. And to me, it was a masculine entity that was communicating with me. And it said, "I am Lot." I'm like, "Oh." And then Lot proceeded to tell me lovely things about love and about the universe and the fact that we're all connected. So that went on for about a page, and then he left, and I went back to I went back to work. And so the next day I go into meditation and I am writing, and Law comes again. And by this time, he's giving me 3 pages of information. So this went on for about a week. And about the 7th day, the information was coming in so fast. I was going like this, shaking my hands so that I could relax it a little bit. And Lot writes, "Why don't you use your computer?" Now, I'm a good typist, and I used to type like 90 words a minute. So it made sense. But to me, I was talking to this ancient something. I didn't even know what it was, but it didn't make sense to me that I was going to be typing information. But he says, you're a good typist. And so I said, okay. So I go downstairs, pick up the computer, bring it back. And by that, computers in the 90s were pretty big. And so I brought it back, dining room table, hands in ready position. And the information flowed for about 6 months. I must have 2,000 to 3,000 pages of beautiful conceptual oneness and love and joy, very similar to Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God. And it really was quite the experience. And my husband, Jeff, he would sit beside me and try to trip him up. Like he would talked a lot through me. And I'm like, Jeff, why don't you just like ask him? He says, oh, no, Becky, you write it. So I would write these questions that Jeff would ask, and Law always answered. And it was really quite, it was quite spectacular. And so I encourage you to believe that we can receive all sorts of communication from our loved ones that have passed, from spirits, from guides, whatever way you use to communicate, feel free to do it. And it really is quite something. For this automatic writing, what I do, and I still do it to this day, is I journal in the beginning. So I'll sit down at my computer and I'll write all sorts of things about what's happening in my life, type them all out, all that. And then I've released it from my brain. So what I'm trying to do is relax my brain. And then I'll take a couple of deep breaths, calm myself, and sit there. And then the information comes. And so that's the technique that I use, that I encourage you to think about doing. If you like, journal first, whether you're writing or typing or whatever. Get everything out of your mind that you can, and then ask for communication. It took me 20 years to have the courage to share this. And I'd been growing. I'd started a private practice just with myself, and it grew to, hundreds of therapists and thousands of clients. And it was about 6 years ago. And I said to my chief financial officer, his name's Bob, hey, Bob, my soul is crying out for me to share this story. And we'd worked together at this point for 22 years. And he looked at me and he said, Becky, I would be very glad to stay here if you're not here. And I'm like, you mean you'd like to buy the business? And you know what he said? I had this business for 32 years. He said, only if you think I can do it. And of course he could do it. And it was such a gift. I started to cry. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to share this information without putting hundreds of therapist jobs at risk. Because we were working with a lot of kids, a lot of pediatrics, a lot of school systems. And I just wasn't at that point ready to have some school board member say, we're working with a company where the president talks to dead people. Like, I just wasn't ready for that to happen. So I sold it to my chief financial officer, and he became president. I became CEO, trained him. Of course, he knew what to do. And at that point, that's when I found the courage to publish my book, Changemaker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. And it really has been quite, it's been quite the journey. One of the things that happened during that interim period is I started to learn about crystals. And for those of you that enjoy crystals, I always have, let's see if you can see this. I always have rose quartz, at least 3 rose quartz in my pocket. And rose quartz are a sign of love. And so if you want to have more love in your life, I encourage you to see if you resonate with any type of crystal, clear quartz crystals, rose quartz crystals, or whatever, and then carry them around with you, or have them in your desk, or have them in your pocket, or have them in your wallet, or whatever. But it's amazing how energetic these crystals can be. It really is quite something. I also want to share that if you're starting to get signs and symbols that you wonder if they are from your loved ones that have passed on, believe it. For example, when our loved ones pass on, it is for some reason, I'm not exactly sure scientifically why, but for some reason they can change electricity. And so if you're turning on the TV and your loved one's favorite TV show comes on, acknowledge it. Say, hey, thank you. Thank you. Whatever, like I'd say, thank you, David. Or if you're going in your car and you turn on the radio and his favorite song comes on, thank you. Because he's trying to send, like David was trying to send me a message. Your loved ones are trying to send you messages, and they a lot of times use electricity. A friend of mine, it was very, very, very sad. Her 18-year-old son passed of a drug overdose. It was very, very tough. And it was about 3 months after he passed. His name's Adam. And she was in his room smelling his clothes and just, oh my gosh, she's his mom. And it was really sad. And she said, Adam, if you were around, please send me a sign. Immediately, the alarm in her house goes off. Woo, 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 woo. I mean, it was incredible. And she's like, oh, she runs down the stairs. Her mother's down there and her sister's down there. And she said, this is Adam. This is Adam. The alarm had never, ever gone off before. Her mother says, that is not Adam. That's just the alarm going off. So we are going to get people that doubt us. The sister has explored spiritual issues and spirituality. And she said, now tell me what happened. The mother had asked Adam for a sign. The alarm goes off. The sister says, yes, I believe you. That is Adam. So things like that happen all the time. It was a couple of years ago, and I had this older car. And as I mentioned, David passed on 10/1, October 1st. And I get in the car, and I'm getting ready to do my first presentation of the fall. And I was going to talk about David, and all the numbers on the car odometer were 100100. It was all zeros and all ones. And I just paused for a minute and I thought, thank you, David. Thank you very much for being with me. So synchronicities absolutely do happen. When they do, send your love. Send your love. Our love passes all boundaries. Love is always received. Express gratitude. Your love will be received, your gratitude will be received, and most likely you'll get some type of sign or communication back. When you see animals like birds and cardinals, particularly for my brother, if birds or animals behave differently when they're around you, like if they come very close to you, and I'm talking like wild animals, if some bird or crow or squirrel or whatever, if it seems to have unusual behavior and for some reason your brain goes to whoever has passed, listen to it, acknowledge it. Somehow our loved ones are able to transform their energy into animals fairly easily, actually, once they learn how to do it. And so David often comes to me very, very frequently as a cardinal. And it really is quite something, it's quite bright and red and gay and happy. And I'm like, thank you, David. And these cardinals, they're very close. They come right up and I think, oh my gosh, it's not just a cardinal flying by. It's coming really close. So that's great fun. When I published my book, Changemaker, How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life, it got published in let's see, it was 2016. I thought I was going to get professionally ostracized. It didn't happen. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. And so my husband and I are visiting all the national parks. We're going to all the national parks in the United States, and we're in the whole rainforest, which I didn't even know we had a rainforest in the United States, but we do. It's in Olympic National Park, which is in the state of Washington. And so we're in the whole rainforest. I pick up my phone, look at it, and it said, congratulations, Changemaker has just won 3 National Book Awards. Can you please come to the Book Expo of America in New York City and pick them up? And I'm like, all right, the afterlife is hitting the mainstream, which now, it's really very exciting what's happening right now. If you are not familiar with the Bigelow Awards, I encourage you to check this out. In February of 2021, a fellow by the name of Bigelow said that he will give $1 million to someone that can prove the afterlife is real. Like, wow, this is pretty interesting. On November 1st, 2021, 29 people won a total of $1.8 million from the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies for their prize-winning essays that verify that human consciousness remains after bodily death. So essentially, what Bigelow Awards have said is that the afterlife is real. These award-winning essays are fantastic and available for free on the website. And all you have to do is go and just plug in Bigelow, how's it go? Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies Awards. Just type that into Google. Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies Awards, and you will get 29 essays that verify the afterlife is real. Jeffrey Mishlove won first place, $500,000. He received $500,000 for verifying that the afterlife is real, and it's good. And there's all these little type of essays, like a minute and a half video. I'm sorry, little videos, and it's just a voluminous amount of information. So he won first prize. Pim Van Lommel, Dr. Pim Van Lommel won second prize, and he's a cardiologist, and he has been a weigher of lots and lots of his patients that have had near-death experiences. And there's a number of near-death experiences, which with IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, is right up our alley. There's a number of people that have won awards for their information about near-death experiences, validating that the afterlife is real. And so again, feel free to check out these Bigelow Awards for Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies Awards. You can get them all. They're all right there. And so the first place winner won $500,000. Second place, I think $300,000. I think the third place was $200,000. Then there's like 11 that got honorable mention, won $50,000. And then there's, I think, 14 others that won $20,000. So $1.8 million. The afterlife is real, and it's really very exciting. Speaking of the afterlife, so I teach Reiki, and Reiki enhances after-death communication. And when I decided that I was going to publish my book, I almost pulled out that I was an occupational therapist, because even then I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want people to think that all OTs talk to dead people. But there is a component within occupational therapy called spirituality, which I didn't really know very much about. But once I realized that there was a spiritual component to occupational therapy, I decided to submit a proposal to teach Reiki at the American Occupational Therapy Annual Conference. Never been done before, got accepted. I'm like, all right. And so that was Reiki Level 1. Next year, Reiki Level 1 and 2. And since 2015, I'm thrilled to say Reiki has been taught at every single in-person American OT annual conference. 2017, Duquesne University calls me up. They're in Pittsburgh. And they said, hey, Beck, a number of our faculty have gone to your Reiki program, and could you please come to our university and teach Reiki? I'm like, yes, that would be great. And so I taught it to all the OT graduating students on a Friday, 40 students. And then the next day there was like 30 people from the community that learned Reiki Level 1, because you can learn Reiki, which enhances after-death communication, in one day. The reason I'm telling you this is because at Duquesne University, and I do have their permission to say this, at Duquesne University in 2017, 70 people learned Reiki Level 1. Most had never even heard the word Reiki. 20%, 15 people had after-death communication experiences, and most had never even had anything like that ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this Reiki really does work to enhance after-death communication. So I teach after-death communication courses. I was thrilled to get invited to go to Lily Dale. If you know Lily Dale's a blast. Lily Dale's in Lily Dale, New York, and it's the first spiritualist community in the United States. And it's a community of psychics and mediums. And they asked me to teach after-death communication there. And I'm like, whoa, this is like unbelievable. And so it's really been quite fun. The thing that I get so excited about is that we can communicate with our loved ones that have passed on. And so what I'd like to do with you right now, just for a few minutes, I'd like to do a little bit of a meditation. Now, I know I get quite charged up and quite excited. And so I encourage you, if you will, just for a few minutes, let's send love to our loved ones living beyond the veil. Let's do this all together. If you will, and you don't have to, I always say, if what I say doesn't resonate, it's totally fine. Do whatever you like, but I encourage you to close your eyes. With your eyes closed, take a nice deep breath. Take a nice deep breath and breathe in peace. Allow peace to go all through you, from your toes to your head, and release any type of nervousness or anxiety you may feel. Just let it go. Let it go out the bottom of your feet and breathe in harmony. Beautiful harmony. Breathe in harmony for the world, harmony for us, harmony for those we love, and release any type of stress you may feel. And now breathe in love. Breathe in love for your loved ones living beyond the veil. Send them your love. Visualize them. Open your heart and share your love. Allow your love to pass through the boundaries, the very thin veil, and connect with your deceased loved ones living beyond, because they are living. They are alive. Feel the connection that you have with your loved ones from beyond. Feel it and receive their love back. Feel your heart open and expanding as you continue to share love with your beautiful loved ones. And express thanks. Express gratitude. Share your love one more time. And then with what I call soft eyes, slowly open your eyes. Come on back. Come on back. And know that your love has been received. And keep your eyes and ears open for some signs the next couple of days. And if you see something that reminds you of your loved one, believe it and say thanks. Believe it. A lot of times our loved ones communicate with us right when they pass, and then they heal. Then they take some time to heal. And you think, well, gosh, maybe I want to communicate with someone that's been 10 years since they passed. It'll still be received because there's no time. The only place there's time, if we live eternally, the only place there's time is here on earth. We're all connected and we're all one. So share that love and keep yourself aware. Oh, that was fun. Thank you for doing that with me. So during COVID, I had all these Reiki presentations. I go all over the place. all these medical universities, and I teach it to people that aren't medical too, but I do teach it to medical professionals. So I'm like, well, this is interesting. Everything's canceled. Now what am I going to do? And I had on my website, and my website's just my name, RebeccaAustill-Clausen.com, and it's no hyphen or anything. And so I had on my website that I do online Reiki, because I had done a little bit, but not really that much. And so a girl emails me and she says, so you do online Reiki treatments? And I'm like, yes. And she said, I'd like to have one. I'm like, okay, great. So during this online Reiki treatment, I'm sending you, what I do is I beam Reiki energy, and Reiki energy uses energy from the universe, and it goes through us. We're like an empty bamboo rod. So first we ask permission from the client or the friend or the family or our pet. Is it all right if I provide you with Reiki? We get the permission. Then we ask for their highest good to be received. We receive energy from the universe. It comes through us, and we send it onward. So I'm doing this with this client online. And it felt like she had a pain in her right knee. So I write down on my yellow pad, which I always have, right knee pain. And then she was doing really well with this. It felt like she was levitating above the bed. So after about 40 minutes, we finished. And I said, so how are you doing? And she said, Becky, I didn't tell you when we started that I had a pain in my right knee, but it's gone. And I hold up the yellow pad and I said, look, I had written down right knee pain. Then she says, and you know what? It also felt I was so relaxed. It felt like I was dancing on air. And I held up my yellow pad again and said, levitating above the bed. So at that point, I'm like, okay, Reiki can be taught online. And I teach, it's coming up. As a matter of fact, it's coming up in March. But anyway, I teach one day Reiki classes. And we do talk about the first thing that happens is that you learn how to self-heal. And so you learn how to self-heal and then help others heal. And most likely, you're going to have some type of communication at some point with deceased loved ones that have passed on, because what Reiki does is it raises our vibrational energy and it puts us in an energetic framework that is more easily accessible to people that are in the afterlife. And so it really is quite something. This Saturday, as a matter of fact, now let me see if I can get this time right. This Saturday on February 5th, Eastern time is 1 o'clock. I'm doing a free webinar, and this free webinar is called Reiki Works. And so it goes from 1 to 2:30 Eastern time, which I believe is 8 to 9:30 Hawaii time, because I think there's a 5-hour difference. And so all you have to do if you want to come for free is sign up for, and you go Reiki Works. And if you put my name in it, Rebecca Austill-Clausen, you'll get it. And so that would be great fun if you wanted to come to that. Or I teach these one-day classes, and at Reiki Works, I introduce what's called Reiki Immersion Online. And Reiki Immersion Online is one-day classes in March on Reiki Level 1, which activates your Reiki energy. If you ever hear about Reiki being done online, to me, what makes it effective is experiential sessions. Now, I used to have tons of people come to my in-person classes and said, I took Reiki online, didn't like it. The thing that I really support is having one-to-one sessions during Reiki training by using breakout rooms. And so I have this wonderful Zoom host who puts everybody in these individual breakout rooms with 2 people, so that you send Reiki to that one person, and then that one person sends it back to you. And you talk about it between the 2 of you, and then we come back as a big group and we talk about it. And that happens 3 times. And so I'm not saying you need to do this with me. If you want to do online Reiki, I encourage you to always ask, is there experiential sessions? Because that makes it effective. In person, Reiki works great. Online, it works almost the same. It's unbelievable. And so Reiki Level 1's on March 5th. Reiki Level 2 is on March 6th, which is a Sunday. And if you happen to be experienced in Reiki and want to become a Reiki master, you need to interview with me, but that's Saturday, March 12th. So that's my little little advertisement there. But when Shaun called me up and he said, "Hey, Beck, can you do February 1st for IANDS?" I thought, oh my gosh, that'd be great. I'd love to do that, because it does give you all an opportunity to learn Reiki and to learn how Reiki enhances after death communication. So I think actually I'm right on time. Bottom line is, love is the common denominator. When we pass, when we're here on earth, the more love we share, the more love we receive. I started a couple of years ago to sign all my emails, professional emails, with love. And I sort of wondered, I'm like, okay, how's this going to go? And honest to Pete, it is great. People send back love whoever. And it's so nice because we're sharing love. And that is the best thing about life. And that is what happens in the afterlife, is that we're filled with love. Send love to your loved ones that have passed on. Believe the signs, trust yourself, and know that you are very loved. And so at this point, please ask me anything you want.
Yeah, what we'll do. So by the way, I will just, this is a plug for Becky's Reiki teaching. She's an amazing teacher. I have taken Reiki level 1, and I'm going to take it again. So I highly recommend everybody, if you're interested at all, because you can give yourself Reiki, and that's it's quite amazing. It's quite, and learning from Becky. Also, you can be certified. A lot of Reiki teachers cannot certify, but Becky can. So why don't we go ahead and if you want to put your questions either in the chat, or you can also use the raise hand function, and we can do it that way. And I'll start off. So while people are thinking of your questions or whatever, so something that is really important is when you were talking about on your writing your course, and how you were in complete gratitude versus like, you had grief, of course, that your brother died, but you had this experience of gratitude. Can you talk just a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of people get confused. They're like, I want to talk to my loved one, but I'm still, mourning them so bad. What advice would you give for people?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Shaun, for asking me to do this again, and for coming to Reiki and all of that. It is very hard to live through the passage of a loved one, no question about it. If you can think that there is a possibility of continuing a healing relationship with your loved one that's passed, that's where gratitude comes in. If we're so filled with grief, we can't feel, we can't express, we can't communicate most of the time because our heart is closed. But if we can share gratitude and share love and thank them, even if we don't see them, hear them, feel them, but we know, we hope that they're alive, which, after the Bigelow Awards, I don't know how we can say people are not alive. It is so exciting with these awards. But anyway, if you really believe that you want to have a continuing relationship with your loved ones, then to me, that's gratitude. Thank you, say thank you. And love and gratitude are so synchronistic. It really is quite exciting to express gratitude. Every day I go outside, and being outside in nature is so healing. To heal from grief, I encourage you to go outside. I do a whole thing about using nature to help heal from grief, but it is fantastic. It really does help. And just hang out with a tree and put your arms around a tree and hug the tree and feel the tree's energy. It will help. Every morning I go out before, when the sun's rising, and I look at the sun, and I open up my heart just for a minute, and I say, thank you. And every night before I go to bed, I do the exact same thing with the moon. And it's so wonderful to live a life filled with love and gratitude. And so I encourage you to do that. It does help, and it does help heal our grieving heart. Hope that helps, Shaun.
Yeah, I think that'll help a lot of people, because a lot of people, they struggle with those feelings of grief and also holding on to the past, and then they can't hear when their loved ones are trying to reach out to them.
Well said.
Which, by the way, you did mention that you teach afterlife, and you have a webinar coming up in a month or so about that too.
Yep, I do. Yeah, I've
Okay.
had a blast. It's been great fun.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to learn more professionally from Becky, she actually teaches a whole course, which is quite amazing.
Thanks, Shaun.
Okay, so the next question, what is, if you can list one or two, what are the most important messages that you got from your brother, from David, after he passed, that you want to share?
The first one is that he's alive. I mean, it took me 20 years to find the courage to share this. And I a lot of times thought I was nuts, thought I was schizophrenic. I mean, I test people for schizophrenia, and I'm like, okay, what is my name? What is the date? Where do I live? Who's the president? And I'm like, I am not schizophrenic. And it feels so right. And so for David to be able to come, probably one of the coolest things that ever happened is I shared how he hadn't been able to go swimming. It was a couple of years after he passed, and we were driving to the Cape Cod, and he came to me in the car and he said, Becky, I would like to come camping with you. And I'm like, okay, great. And he was quite clear. He said, if this gets to be too much, I want to be inside you. If this gets to be too much, just tell me and I'll leave. And I'm like, okay. And so we're at the campsite, and he said, I'd love to go swimming. Now, we go camping. We've been camping for 60 plus years, and I know this campground. I had no idea where David wanted me to go. And I said, David, I don't know where this is. And he says, all right, I'll take you. And he took me through the woods. I had no idea. We end up at this magnificent lake that I had never been to this place before. And the experience of him is his excitement as I got ready to dive into the water. It was absolutely incredible. I dove into the water, and as I penetrated the water, the joy and the effervescence and the cheer and the love and the comfort was ecstasy. It was absolutely incredible to feel my brother inside me, feel the physicality of swimming was miraculous. And so that was one of the hugest things. The other one was when I channeled him for my family, which I had never done. And that was the first year after he passed. And that was really quite something. It really is amazing when you trust yourself to be able to share these gifts. And if I can do this, anybody can. I had zippo psychic or spiritual experience. So I am well aware that I was flatlined as far as abilities. And if I can learn this, anybody can.
That's beautiful. Okay, how about Lot? Do you still talk to Lot?
Lot left after about 6 months. He did just come back. I can get him if I want, but he's far. He said, Becky, or he calls me Rebecca, Rebekah. And that's not how I spell my name. And for me, I'm like, okay, what's he doing with this name? And it was like rebirth, regeneration, reincarnation. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. It's older. That spelling is an older way. And he says, I'm going to leave now. And I'm like, why are you going to leave? You come every day for like 6 months. And he said, there are lots of spirits, lots of people, lots of guides that want to come to you. And the amount of guides and spirit guides and ancient folks and people that have recently passed that are able to come to each one of us is incredible. And it's really quite fun. So no, lot does not come to me on a regular basis. I can still get them if I want, but I'm pretty I'm a pretty much of an open book. I like to see what's going to come rather than me asking most of the time.
Right. So Tim, and you kind of already answered some of this, but Tim wants to know if you believe in reincarnation.
Yes.
And also about your dad was a minister, which I think you did answer. Does he accept your beliefs?
Yeah, it was so interesting. I absolutely do believe in reincarnation because, if we live forever, what I believe is that we consciously, our human consciousness remains after we die. And that's what IANDS believes. That's what the Bigelow Awards believe. That's what I believe. I believe the essence of us remains. And so if the essence of us remains, then I believe it's an active choice for us to decide to come to Earth. And reading lots, and I read hundreds of books, and reading all these books, a lot of them will say that we come to Earth to elevate our ability to love, to expand our growth, to go further into the feeling of connectedness and oneness. That's what Earth does. Earth jumpstarts all of that. And so we can come back to Earth time and time and time and time and time again, as long as we want to, but it's our choice to do that. Regarding my dad, it's so interesting. I've been doing Reiki for 25, 26 years, and my parents didn't want it, and they have now passed. They didn't want it until about a week before they passed. And then they finally said, okay. And so I would send them Reiki because I do a lot of work with hospice. And they're both like, wow, I'm so relaxed. And that's what it does. It relaxes us. It gives us a sense of self-worth, reduces pain, things like that. When my dad passed, I love communicating with people that I know that have just passed. And so Dad passes. And I said to him, hey, Dad, how is it? And Dad always had projects, always had multiple projects. And he said, Becky, he says, they call you Rebecca over here. And I'm like, yes, actually, I do know that. He says, well, and I was interested in what he was going to call me. He called me Becky again. He says, Becky, there is an unlimited amount of possibilities, an unlimited amount of avenues, an unlimited amount of explorations that I can do now that I'm on the other side. And then he stopped. And so I'm typing all this because I do this automatic writing. And I said, well, he waited. I waited. And then I said, well, so Dad, what are you going to do? And you know what he said? I'm just going to be. I'm just going to be. And for a man that was always exploring, always trying to what he calls crack the nut, I thought, oh my gosh, what a marvelous statement. Because, that brings us to mindfulness. If there's no time, then it really is important for us to be present in the now, for us to concentrate on what's happening right now, not what happened in the past, not what happened in the future, but right now. And when people hold on to grief for a long time, it's tough because it doesn't allow us to live in the now. And that's what my dad continues to teach me. It's so wonderful to be able to have these continuing relationships. So yes, Dad did see my brother a couple of times. And the first time he saw him, he goes, okay, before he passed, okay, Beck, now I get what you're talking about. And it is really a wonderful thing for me not to have been ostracized by my family. My husband's been fantastic. And that was a gift because sometimes our loved ones that are here with us on earth do not accept what we're doing, but hopefully they will. And the bottom line is that you want to accept it. So thank you for that question.
Beautiful. And as an underline, the present moment is all there is. That's the only time we are connected.
Yeah.
Right.
Well
so
said.
if we're in the past, if we're still angry at them, or we're not going to hear them. So thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so here's this. Solange has a really interesting question, and a lot of people, I'm sure, feel this. So she said, people always talk about a loved one And for a long time, I've wanted to ask, well, what if we don't feel we have loved ones on the other side because we didn't have a loving relationship with them when they were on Earth?
That is a really interesting question, and it is one that I'm quite familiar with. What I believe, and again, this is what I believe, but it's based on me exploring the afterlife for 26 years, and I coach people and I listen well. To my understanding, what happens is when we pass, we are allowed time to heal, and we're allowed time to, because there is no time. So it is a time for us when we pass to make amends, to understand how our life has impacted others. There's a lot of conversation with people that have had near-death experiences that we have a life review. Not only when we have a life review do we see our life, we see how our life affects others. And so if we don't have if we don't feel that we have a loving relationship with people that have passed, hopefully what has happened is that this person that's passed, that was a tricky relationship for us on Earth, hopefully they have understood how their actions have impacted us. And you may hear from them. You may hear from them that they want to come back. And at that point, and talk with you, communicate with you. At that point, if you're ready, I encourage you to listen. If you're not ready, take your time, because you want to be ready to hear what they have to say. It really is quite powerful to listen to people that you've not had a loving relationship with, communicate with you with them starting it. Because that's really the gist of it, is that they need to start it. They need to have healed. Because what I have learned, in order for them to continue healing on the other side, and to continue going into what we call the center, the oneness, the connectedness, they need to acknowledge how their actions impacted us. And so if you don't have a loving relationship, you don't have a loving relationship. Hopefully, you're able to receive some type of communication from them on some point. Or if you want to reach out to them, feel free. But if they haven't reached out to you, it's somewhat unlikely that they may have healed. But I do believe that they will heal at some point. And if you don't have that connectedness, that coming together on Earth, hopefully when you pass, you'll at some point have that connectedness, because I do believe we're all connected. And particularly if we're part of the same family, we have that same family when we pass, and others too. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, and I'll also add that, in my experience, there are ones that we don't know the whole picture here. We don't know what they were going through. And so sometimes if we allow ourselves to connect with them, they'll show us what they were going through. And it changes everything. When you realize this person that was kind of a jerk to you, why, and you see the whole picture, it's like, oh, wow. It helps us have compassion. And it helps us to forgive them for ourselves and for them.
Well said.
Okay, so a quick Reiki question. First degree Reiki, can he take second degree Reiki from you? So if somebody's taken Reiki level 1 somewhere else and they want to take Reiki level 2 with you, how does that? They can do that, right?
No problem. The only thing is I do need to see the certificate. And so registration actually for Reiki Immersion, IMMERSION, Reiki Immersion online, opens up at Reiki Works, which is the free webinar this Saturday. So this Saturday at like 1 o'clock Eastern is when Reiki Immersion online opens, and it'll help you to read the website for that. It's Reiki Immersion online. And it doesn't matter to me who you learn Reiki from, as long as you have a certificate. And so if you can send me the certificate, you just register for Reiki 2, and then it'll say, please send me the certificate. And yes, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. And if you've done Reiki 1 and Reiki 2 and you want to be a Reiki master, as long as you have at least 6 months experience and fully embrace the Reiki philosophy, feel free to to do an interview with me. And you need to have at least 6 months experience from any Reiki master. Feel free to let me know. It's really fun. It's such an honor to be able to teach Reiki and to teach ourselves how to heal. It really is quite something. Not only do we teach ourselves, but we help others too. Plus, we help ourselves engage with the afterlife.
And it's a blast. I did level 1 and I'm doing level 1 again.
Thanks. And you don't have to, but you can.
I know I don't, but I love it. So, okay, so we have a really great question that a lot of people that have, that can hear, that are communicating with the other side. And so she wants to know, how do you perceive or discern the voices of your loved ones in spirit? So how do you know it's them versus you, your ego? How do you discern? And maybe who's who? Who's your dad and who's David?
It's a good question. I ask. And then you think, now, wait a minute. Is my mind telling me rather than my heart? The thing you learn is to trust your heart, because love is the deal. Like when we pass, it's really our heart that continues, the essence of who we are. Love is the common denominator. And so you try to put your mind out of it and you ask, who are you? And then trust yourself. That very first answer you get, trust it and go with it. Just go with it. And this is sort of a ridiculous answer, but it's not bad. And the ridiculous answer is, it makes us feel good anyway. If you think it's your mother and you ask and you get your mother, believe it's your mother and send her love. Send her love. And that's why I say it's sort of ridiculous, because it's just sort of going back to trust, but you're going back to trusting yourself. So you ask who it is when you're, and I don't mean to be such a, do Reiki, but Reiki does work. Reiki teaches you to feel the different type of energy. And when we do these experiential online Reiki classes, you have 3 different people that you work one-on-one with, and you will feel the difference in energy between one person, the second person, and the third person. You can tell. And it is extraordinary. In one day, you can feel the difference in energy. So if you can do that in one day, imagine what happens in 2 days. Because see what happens on Reiki level 1. You get your energy activated. You figure out how to self-heal. You do these 3 healing sessions. You learn the history and philosophy. Reiki level 2, you figure out why it works. Why does this work? That's Reiki level 2. Then you have more experiential sessions, all that jazz. So within 2 days, you have 6 people that you have felt different energy with, which goes back to, how do you figure out who these spirits are? You ask, but you tap into their energy. It's what I do it with deep breathing. I just take a nice deep breath. I open my heart. I clear my heart. And I ask. I alleviate everything from my brain. And you may want to know how to do that, but you alleviate everything from your brain. Trust your heart and tap into the energy. And then you can figure out who it is. And it's fun. It is absolutely fun, amazing, miraculous, and healing. So you want me to tell you how to clear your mind? Since I said that, there's a lot of different ways to clear your mind, but this is like the classic. And it does seem to work sometimes, but whatever works for you to clear your mind. Ideally, if you can just calm yourself and take a couple of deep breaths in and out, relax, become present in the moment. If something goes through your mind, you can do it a couple of different ways. Allow yourself to think about it and then let it go. Just let it go. Or if you're unable to let it go, imagine a balloon attached to your wrist. The balloon string is attached to your wrist. And so the balloon string is always going to be part of you. And then the balloon goes up here. And so if you can't let it go out of your mind, visually put this thought in the balloon. Put it in the balloon and know that at the end of whatever you're doing, you can get that balloon back. And you will remember what that is, but know that it's attached to you, so it's not going to go away. And that actually seems to work pretty well if you can just clear your mind, put it consciously in the balloon. And so hopefully that's a way to help clear your mind as well.
That's a great tip. That's really good. So here's a comment from Blaine that's actually really beautiful. And he says, I've been with many who were dying from AIDS, and most talked about all the people in the room with us. But in many cases, it was just me and him there, and them, a person, whoever it was, in physical form. So he's saying thank you for validating these experiences.
Thank you so much for being present with, particularly with people with AIDS that have passed. You know, it's become, people aren't passing, as many people aren't passing of AIDS these days as in the 1990s. It was a horrendous time, and it was really tough. You know, people were ostracized, and it wasn't good. But the bottom line is that it's love. You know, having the presence of a loved one with you when you're passing is so reassuring. It's hard. It's hard on the loved one that's left behind, but it is a beautiful gift that you're giving to so many people. And thank you very, very much for doing that. It's truly a gift from the heart, and it's very appreciated. Well done. Thank you.
And yes, by the way, to everybody, we'll have all of the links will be in the Hawaiian IANDS Facebook group, also in our next newsletter. And so we'll make sure that you have all of Becky's links.
Thanks.
Okay, so another one about, she would like to know more about herself hearing the messages. So she kind of, I'm gonna put my words in your mouth, the person who asked the question. She gets in her own way when the messages are coming for her. So she can get messages for other people all the time.
Oh,
But what would you know, but like if it's a message for her, hearing it and being able to discern correctly.
so that's really interesting. Thank you for asking that question. It sounds like your mind is getting, and I mean your intelligence, you know, your intelligent mind is getting in the way of your acceptance that you can get messages from you, because you clearly are able to get messages for other people. So if you can get messages for other people, you can get messages for yourself, but there's something happening there. There's some block, you know. It's like, well what's going on there? And so I would encourage you to go outside. Hopefully, I'm in the East Coast and it's freezing cold, but hopefully at some point you can have a nice summer day or a spring day or whatever. I would encourage you to go outside, hang out by a tree or someplace very, very, very comfortable for you, or the ocean, and close your eyes and do some deep breathing. And then in the healing arms of nature, see if you can get messages for yourself. First ask, because the concept is that we all have guides. We all have guides, but we have free will, and the guides will not impact our lives unless we ask. And so if you're having issues with getting messages for you, but you can get them for other people, I encourage you to go to a place that feels very comfortable and is outside, because nature does work. And so if you go outside someplace where you're alone, you're comfortable, you feel happy and relaxed, ask for your guides for assistance. Can you please help me? Can you please help me get a message for myself? And then do your meditation, calm yourself, and then ask for whatever you're looking for or what your messages are. That's one way. You also may want to, like, however you're getting the messages, like if you're channeling the messages verbally, which works for other people, but it doesn't work for you, maybe you might want to try writing them. maybe take a yellow pad or whatever, white pad, and ask, I would like to receive messages for myself, and clear your mind. And then write. You just start writing whatever you're thinking without thought. You do not analyze what you're writing until it's finished. You just write. And that may help break this feeling that you're unable to receive messages for yourself. So using another form of getting messages may help you get over that hump. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, so another Reiki question, which I think I know the answer, but can you take Reiki 1 and 2 in March? Which you can, right? 5th and the 6th, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, but then they want to know about the Reiki Master, and that takes, what does that take to do level 3?
Yeah, 6 months, a minimum. 6 months after you've had, for me, this is for me, and you don't have to do Reiki for me, but it's fun. But you want to trust the person. You want to like the person because you're sharing energy. But the way it works for me is that you want to have a minimum of 6 months experience after Reiki 2. And so I've got a variety of people actually that are doing an interview, because I interview people because I want to just sort of see how you are, what your plans are, how what your understanding of Reiki is, all that. And so they took Reiki 1 and 2 with me last year, and now we've got interviews. I've got one actually tomorrow or the next day for Reiki Master. And so you can do that. I do Reiki in the spring, and I teach after death communication in the fall. That's sort of my schedule. So yeah, you definitely can do that.
We have a lot of really cool comments about. Judith says that her twin brother passed of AIDS at age 42.
So sorry.
He was a drinker, to cope with it. He was not out of the closet back then. It was in 1989, and she's now 74. So thank you for sharing that, Judith.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm right there with you. Like at 89, David passed in 95. It was a tough time, but it's a lot better now, but it's still rough. And you can receive his love and share your love with him. And it certainly is unfortunate. It certainly is unfortunate to have lost so many wonderful men and women to AIDS. It's a tough disease, but now a lot of people are not dying from AIDS, which is really very good. I wish we could find the cure. Wish we could, but thank you for sharing, and know that I'm sending you lots of love and support. And for everybody that's on this that have lost loved ones, I am absolutely sending you my love, my deepest love and support, always and forever.
So Blaine would like to know. So I can't hear messages, but feel things very intensely. And most of the time I know who it is. Is there a reason I can't hear messages, only feel things?
Yeah, there's not a reason. It's a good question. We all have our ways of learning, and they're called the clayas. Whether you hear, see, smell, sense, feel, and there's no right or wrong. Most everybody wants to see because we're so visually minded, but it's not better that you feel or less that you feel. Most everybody wants, to really have that impact. I was lucky. With, I don't see David most of the time now. I did see him that first time, but no, it's fine that you feel. Actually, it's wonderful to feel. It's we didn't really talk about this, but sometimes when you feel it gets tough. You might be an empath where you feel things very, very, very strongly, and you want to protect yourself. And I don't like that word protect, because to me, the word protect means you have to be protected. But sometimes you do need to protect yourself from other people's energy that just doesn't feel right. And I call it shielding. It's good to shield ourselves on occasion if we find ourselves in need of closing down that ability to feel. And the way I recommend people do this, or a way to do it, just one of the ways, is if you surround yourself with a clear egg-shaped glass. You're in the middle. And so there's a glass all around you. It goes above your head, under your feet, on each side of you, front and back. You're in the middle. And you can set your clear egg-shaped glass anywhere from usually 6 inches to like 10 or 12 inches from your body. And what you want to do is visualize that nothing, absolutely nothing, is going to pass this shield, because it's glass. You can see out, people can see in, but nothing can penetrate that glass. And it's something to practice. Now, I recommend only having a shield up when you need it, and only having it for the time you need it. For example, if somebody's energy just doesn't feel good at all, like it's just not good, set up your shield and practice being able to set it up, and then ideally take it down like after about 20 minutes or so, because it is hard for you to feel like, because your energy has to go past the shield, but the idea is to protect yourself from other people's energy. That's the concept. And so feeling is totally fine, and there's nothing less or better than any of the other ways to feel. It's just how you receive messages. So way to go. So cheers for you for being able to do it that way.
Yeah, and also dreams. You know, we Rick and Beth Olson. Their children, if you guys don't know who they are, their kids were killed by a drunk driver 22 years ago. And so the children started communicating with them, was their son and daughter. And the husband, Rick, he can hear them, but Beth, they come to her in her dreams. So yeah, everybody is different.
Dreams are awesome. You know, if you have a dream that has your loved one in it, your deceased loved one, it's real. Like they're using dreams to communicate with us, because the concept is that when we go to sleep, our soul, our unconscious, whatever you want to call it, rises. Well, let's just use that as an example. It rises and it can connect with our loved ones that are living beyond. I could say it goes into the center, but you know, let's just use the word rise. And so it can connect, we connect easier when we're in a dream state. And these are the special dreams, like, you know, like you remember these dreams. And if you remember a dream really well that has your loved one in it, that's a sign that you really and truly are communicating with your loved one living beyond. Dreams are great. I encourage you, if you dream, to keep or you think you're going to dream, to keep a journal. And so that as soon as you wake up, write it down, because our brains don't remember all of this. And so write it down so that you have it. Another way to increase your ability to receive dreams from your loved ones that have passed is to ask. When you go to bed, calm yourself. You know, get in a mindful state, lie there and connect with yourself, connect mindfully, and then ask, say, I would love to receive a message from you tonight. And then keep yourself aware. You may or may not receive it. You may or may not remember it. But if your loved one is able to communicate with you in dreams, it's a nice way to communicate. So it's fun to try it.
Yeah, and definitely underline, write the note, write it down as soon as it happens, because it seems like for like me, the ego wants to talk me out of it. Oh, it didn't happen, or it's not that spectacular, or so I've learned, just trust it. If it happened, if you feel it, go with that, and don't let the ego talk you out of it.
And write the date. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh yeah, exactly. And also the self-limiting beliefs, which, you know, the person who had asked earlier, like, why can I hear for everyone else but not myself? I found in my experience, it's those self-limiting beliefs that we sometimes hold, or, you know, like, everyone else can do this, but not me, not realizing that we're all capable of it.
We are. And I encourage you to do the date and the year, so that, and keep them, you know, and then because then you're going to think, it's amazing how many times we wonder if these are real. And you go back and you look at all these experiences that you've had, and you're like, okay, this is real, and it helps.
This is a great one from Brian. So it's a comment and then a question. What a beautiful story you shared with us. There's so many similarities in your journey and mine. For me, it was my sister. The things you speak of are things that I've experienced too. I'm a Reiki master, 22 years, taught myself automatic writing, then typing, connection with nature and animals, birds, cats, dogs, and wild goods, even to help with hospice. I now use hypnosis with other healing modalities, and it's been great. Hypnosis seems to help me get deep messages from family and even ascended masters. My question is about shamanism. Did this help you with your journey? I do not remember most of my dreams, but when I do see loved ones, how can I remember more of my dreams? Which we just kind of talked about. But the shamanism, I think you would love to know, which we didn't talk a whole lot about shamanism.
I know, I didn't. Sorry. First of all, I think you said your name was Brian. Way to go, man. Yes, we definitely have similarities. And isn't it fun? Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I love shamanism. I always thought that there was a massive similarity between Reiki and shamanism. And so I encourage you to check out shamanism. The woman that I learned from, she's doing shamanic Reiki, and her name's Lynn Roberts, L-L-Y-N, Lynn Roberts. And I was at her first Omega Institute. Hopefully you know of Omega Institute, which is in Rhinebeck, New York. Wonderful, wonderful continuing ed spot for all of us. It's a great adult continuing ed, great spot. It was the first time she taught at Omega Institute shamanic Reiki, and I think it was about 10 years ago. She's really quite good at combining shamanism and Reiki, and I find that is a lot of what I do with Reiki these days, is to journey with people to the afterlife, to help them identify their guides, to meet their spirit guides. All that's done with shamanic Reiki or shamanic journeying. And so, yes, it does help us remember, and it does help us to travel beyond our earthly existence. That's what shamanism is, and it is a blast. Foundation for Shamanic Studies, started by Dr. Michael Harner, Harner. It's called Foundation for Shamanic Studies. They have weekend courses, and Dr. Harner passed a while ago, and it's changed a little bit, but a lot of the courses are still the same. I took essentially every single one, and they're good. Sandra Ingerman, Ingerman, Sandra. She is considered one of the topmost shamanic practitioners internationally these days, written tons of books. She and Lynn Roberts wrote a really good book on nature and shamanism and nature's healing and all of that. So those are some resources. I love shamanism, and it is very, very effective. And with everything that you've done, I encourage you to check out shamanic Reiki. It's a good addition to your hypnosis and automatic writing and nature and all of that. Reiki, of course, you have to be a Reiki master in order to do the shamanic Reiki, and it's good. So thanks for asking, and way to go, man.
And you would say we all have spirit guides, whether we believe it or know it or not, right?
Yeah.
Every one of us. None of us are alone here.
None of us are alone. And it's so amazing to think, we can tap into them, but you have to ask, because we have free will, and they're not going to interfere unless we ask. And you think, well, why is that? Then why are they here? Well, they're here to be available as an assist if we ask, because it's our journey. It's nobody else's journey. It's our journey. It's an interesting thing. In Reiki, there's a concept, and I do what's called Yusui Reiki, USUI. It's the fellow that pretty much started the current form of Reiki. Is from Japan. There's a concept that we are perfect the way we are. And you think, oh my gosh, how can we be perfect the way we are? But that is the concept. We're perfect the way we are. And so it really is quite something. If we're perfect the way we are, well, do we want to grow? Do we want to stay? What do we want to do? We really can't make a mistake. But if you want to keep growing and you want to connect with your guides, ask them. I would be interested in learning more about you. And you can do that shamanically. You can do it with Reiki. You can do it in meditation. Ask them their name. What's your name? And you may just get some syllables. It might not be a real name, but just trust yourself. Helps to do that with somebody that knows how to do it, unless you're good at this, the first time. But sometimes our mind gets in the way and we think, what am I doing? But you really can connect with your spirit guides, and it's fun and it's nice and it's empowering. I encourage you to think about doing it.
And it actually makes life magical.
Oh, it is. That's a good. Yes, it is. That's fun and magical. Yep. My license plate happens to be have fun. So magical is a great word.
Yeah, it is supposed to be fun. We don't realize that sometimes, but
Agreed.
It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to enjoy it. So Michael says, Becky, this is high energy stuff. Does it ever tire you out? And how do you maintain your high energy level? It's late here on the East Coast and you're still going strong.
Do you know, I got up at 4 o'clock this morning and I'm like, oh my God, I got up. I have to do this thing at 9 o'clock. I go to bed usually at like 9 o'clock, but I took a half an hour nap. I do have a tremendous amount of energy, and no, I do not get tired. I rarely get tired, and I'm always like this. It is quite something. But like once a year, I'll get like perturbed for about 3 or 4 hours about something. But most of the time, I mean, all the time, I love being positive. Course of Miracles and all of that with thought has energy. Positive thought facilitates positive action. If you're positive, more things happen that are positive. I think everything in life has a positive result. Everything. Even the worst thing that happened to me, which was my brother passed. I mean, look what's happened. I can communicate with him. I'm teaching everybody that, or, everybody that wants to learn, that we can all do this. Like, what a result. It really is something. And I fully believe that everything in life has a positive component, and the more positivity you express, the more you get. And it's a wonderful way to be. And I also, because I think about that, I'm like, Becky, how come you're so like happy? But I also hang out a lot in nature. And nature is very healing. There's a whole deal called forest bathing. And like I do all these presentations on forest bathing. And in a nutshell, it's being mindful in the forest and engaging in the woods. And it was started in Japan, the same place that this current form of Reiki started. And it's pretty cool. And physicians in Japan now are starting to write prescriptions to reduce stress and anxiety for forest bathing. And there are statistical studies that your cortisol level, which is the stress enzyme in our body, reduces after 2 hours in the woods. Now check that out. So, spending time outside really does have a healing effect. And I spend a lot of time outside and it's very nice. So thanks for the comment about positivity.
And needless to say, you have connected to energy. I mean, that's with the Reiki and your brother, and it flows through you. So how could it not? I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. The biggest benefit is we benefit from it, and letting it flow through and sharing. And one thing I was going to add that I actually learned from my occupational therapist after my NDE, because I had to go to rehab for a year and a half, is our words have meaning. That was the first thing she said, because I said something about my bad ankles. And I have never forgotten that. Words are creation, and the words that we speak, and that's another indicator of how we're going to feel on the words, like if we claim our illness or whatever. So.
Agreed. I speaking of words, that was great, Shaun. And I'm thrilled that you learned that from an OT. That's excellent. I am not fond of the word should, because should implies judgment. and we don't have to judge ourselves or others. If you think of the word should, I should do this, it's just like this negative down. I should do this. I could do this. And so just that change from should to could is really quite a whole positive component to that concept of doing something. I should do that. Like, I don't like the word should. I could do this. So yes, way to go, man.
Yes, stop shitting all of ours. Okay, so let's see if we have lots of great comments. Let's see.
Thank you all for staying on, and thank you all for being here. My gosh, and Shaun, you're doing a great job. Thank you, Susan, for being behind the scenes and orchestrating all this. I mean, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much answered all of the questions unless anybody else has a final question. But we will make sure in the Hawaiian IANDS Facebook group and the other IANDS pages, we will have all of Becky's information. And I hope to see you guys all because it really is. I know other energy teachers, healers, and Becky's class is so much fun. You feel the energy. Even if you're not energetically sensitive, you will in a few hours. It's amazing. I've watched people how in a few hours they are connected with it. So if you're at all interested, I highly recommend it, because you're only doing it. You're not doing it again for how long till you do Reiki?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm doing it again at IANDS. Like, I was so excited to do Reiki level 1 at the IANDS annual conference 2021. That was online. Now, IANDS this year annual conference is supposed to be at Salt Lake City, Utah, which is fab. Like, Utah is the best state for national parks. You got Arches, Zion, Bryce. I mean, it is fantastic. And so it's September 1st to September 4th, 2022. And that's the Salt Lake City IANDS annual conference. And I'm pretty sure Reiki's going to be taught. It either will be taught, it's going to be Reiki 1, either will be taught most likely the day before, which I think there's 31 days in August. So it will be August 31st or September 1st. So that's Reiki level 1. And then in the spring, I do Reiki level 2. I'm going to
Salt Lake City is where I was born.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, way to go, Shaun. Yeah, it's going to be nice. Hopefully it'll be in person. It's supposed to be in person. Yeah. So hopefully that'll happen.
Well, thank you so much, Becky. Thank you, Susan, for helping us. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and really enjoyed it. So everybody have a great night.
It's been a pleasure. Your questions were great. Your comments, your environment. This is a great group. And gosh, there's a lot going on, a lot of resources. Shaun, you do an awesome job. Susan, it's wonderful seeing you again. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. And bottom line, lots of love. Lots of love to you. Give yourself a nice big hug and feel that love, like feel it coming to you from me to you, from you to you, from your loved ones to you. Like, just feel that love. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you all very, very much. And lots of love, always and forever.
And one final note that I forgot. In the next week or so, because we've done it a couple of times and it's worked out pretty good, we're going to actually do an after-death communication sharing group. Wow. So yeah, we did one impromptu the other week, and it was really nice. So everybody just watch your newsletter or Hawaiian IANDS, because it's kind of nice just as a sharing group. We all come together and say, I experienced this or that, and this worked and that. So I just wanted to let you all know I completely forgot about that just now. So thank you again. Have a great night, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.